because, 16 years together, I think must have been over 10 years ago. So I think it's been more years being very different in our beliefs than on the same page. And for the whole picture, it did get pretty extreme with her. Like, she definitely shut down religion from her life completely. She's like defining herself as an atheist. So it wasn't just like, I didn't really like the movement and I still like to be, I don't know, Christian or something like that, and I still believe in God. She was like really, pushed the whole topic of religion in general and God away from her. And so obviously that did affect me too.
Hello and welcome
to the Heine & Couples podcast,
where we empower blessed couples
to deepen the love, fostering mutual pleasure, connection, and joy.
So let's dive in.
Yeah, welcome back to the Heine & Couples podcast. Thank you, Joni, for coming back onto the podcast. Almost 1 year since the last podcast, so time has passed really quickly.
Indeed.
Yeah. So today will be a very interesting topic, which I believe a lot of blessed couples face, which is when one is maybe not so much connected to community or having differences in practicing one's belief. So before really starting on really hitting the topic, maybe to go first a little bit on what were your hopes and dreams when you started your blessing at the beginning?
What were my hopes and dreams? I mean, growing up in our movement, being a partner or a relationship, being blessed to someone, it's kind of almost the whole point, right? Like, you're working towards that for a long time. I went also through, a lot of struggles thinking about, how I want to live my life and, do I want to go this way? And being in a relationship was always a very important thing for me. And I did prepare very intentionally for many years, and it wasn't always easy. And so obviously when you are in the relationship, all of a sudden your dream is definitely that, obviously that work will continue, but it's almost like harvesting the fruit that you've been waiting for, kind of, right? Like to finally build a relationship. So a lot of positive anticipation, a lot of like hope and happiness thinking about it, and creating life together. I think maybe everyone would put it in a little bit different words, but I think almost everyone growing up, maybe even outside the movement, that's kind of what most people want. So it wasn't anything else for me, basically. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like going back to basics and then preparing for what you want to do. And then, I mean, as you said, like, you come together as two people, and then it might also change, right? Throughout the relationship. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously can always change, but obviously you always think about just having a harmonious and happy life, happy relationship, ups and downs, of course, but just creating a family together.
Yeah, this is kind of a universal dream or hope for a future, or like as a young person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when did you first become aware that you and your wife were on different spiritual paths, and what was that process like for both of you? Gradual or sudden?
That's a very good question, and it's not too easy to answer because it's been some time. We've been together for 16 years now, and definitely took a little bit. I remember when we were young, and we were 20 and 18, when we got together, and our kids were born when we were very young, or as well. We were like on 21. She was 20. I just turned 22. I think that's when we had our first kid, and then 1 year later already our second kid. I think it wasn't completely, all of a sudden. It was a little bit subtle, but then it was pretty clear. Like, my wife, she started sharing with me about also like her upbringing and her experiences within the movement, and I noticed pretty quickly that a lot of things weren't so nice, what she's experienced in the movement. And I've heard a lot of stories also from people my age, struggling with certain things, including myself here and there, of course, too. But I grew up in a pretty healthy community, I think. And yeah, there were quite some things that were difficult for my wife, not wanting to go into all the details. So that must have been a few years in our relationship, I think, after the kids were already born, though. And also struggling with some things regarding her family, because, for example, my wife also witnessed her parents suffering a lot in their relationship to her older brother, who kind of distanced himself from the movement early on. And she saw her parents struggling with that a lot, grieving that. And I think she almost felt some kind of obligation, or she kind of didn't want to see her parents like that again. And that played a big role for her to like go on with that path, basically. It wasn't so intrinsic for her. She realized it a little later, I think, because she was also very young. So that's kind of how it started. And yeah, it was definitely challenging. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when, what, in what years, or in how long have you been already together since you both noticed, oh, okay, there is some difficult feelings for her because she had so many difficult and painful experiences within the church community, also with seeing her parents, how they were acting toward her older brother, and where then she noticed this is actually not the path I want to go, and how okay, I'm gonna stop here because it's a too long of a question.
Yeah. It must have been over 10 years ago now. Yeah, definitely. Because, 16 years together, I think, yeah, when our kids were pretty small, I remember that already being a topic, and they're 13 and 14 now. So it must have been over 10 years ago. So I think it's been more years being very different in our beliefs than on the same page. And yeah, and it also, just to like, for the whole picture, it did get pretty extreme with her. Like, she definitely shut down religion from her life completely. Like, yeah, she's like defining herself as an atheist. So it wasn't just like, I didn't really like the movement and I still like to be, I don't know, Christian or something like that, and I still believe in God. She was like really, pushed the whole topic of religion in general and God away from her. And so obviously that did affect me too. And it was a little bit shocking because, you're growing up and you think like, oh, isn't that like kind of our foundation together? Do we even have a good foundation now to continue a relationship? So it definitely brought a lot of questions up and struggles up for me too. Yeah, but she was pretty serious about her withdrawal, and I could understand what she was like, also with her story and the things that were very painful for her. Like, it kind of made sense for me in a way too, but it was definitely still very difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how was that for you then, to, on one side, understanding her, but also, yeah, not wanting to give up on your own beliefs?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, it was important for me to check in on her. Like, is it a problem for her if I still, believe in God and am kind of connected to the movement? I think she maybe struggled for some time a little bit more than the other way around, because she really felt pain and negative feelings around this whole topic. But that was okay after some time. And yeah, for me, I did have quite a lot of conversations with God about this topic. Actually, I prayed a lot and I talked to God about it a lot. And my clear conclusion, I was asking God, what do you think? Can you work with this situation? Is this gonna work? And my clear feeling and my clear answer from God was, what's it all about? I have a wife now and I have 2 little children, and it would be completely wrong to just, split up because of having different beliefs. Because, yeah, I did already have that belief in a way, but it got much deeper for me to look at the essence. The essence is love. The essence is true love. And the essence is exactly that: overcoming, different beliefs, different nationalities, different political views, whatever it is that could divide you. Obviously, you do need some kind of foundation. You do need some common ground for a relationship to work. And I was like, okay, I'm not exactly sure right now what that is. And then I looked more into that. And for me, my clear conclusion was I'm going to judge the situation by, how we live, how we act, what our principles and values are in our life. And, if I still see, that there's love between us and that my wife is a good person and she strives for good things and me too, then that's what actually counts. If her not believing in God would lead to actions and to behavior that I could not deal with anymore because I'm like, okay, I don't want to be with this person on the level of just, practicing what you preach basically, because atheists don't necessarily preach hate per se. It's
Yeah.
not like they want to destroy the world. Atheists also have. I mean, not all of them, but there's a lot of atheists. I know a lot of atheists who are exceptionally good people. So that was just much more important for me, and it also was intellectually a challenge for me. Okay, how do you make that work? And where is the common ground between atheists and believers? So for me, it was so interesting too. Like on the one hand, challenging, on the other hand, intellectually interesting to see. Like, okay, if my wife and I can become a unity or stay unity, then I believe that believers and non-believers on the planet can be a unity too, and see what what unites us. What's the common ground? Because often also in our movement, it's like, oh yeah, one family under God, and I'm like, okay, what about the atheists? So they don't belong to our unified world. Then they have to be in hell then or whatever. So that was always interesting to think about. Yeah. So my main focus was I wanted to look at how we live, how we act, how we behave, how we love each other. And it was very easy for me to answer that it is going to be a challenge, but yeah, there's no reason for me to not love because, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to love my wife. That's my main job, no matter what she does, she thinks, she feels. I mean, obviously, it does matter what she does. There's certain, limits, what I would accept, of course, in a relationship. But yeah, that was kind of my thought process and my feelings in that time.
Yeah. Yeah. You're very, very right with like, this is what we teach, what it's the teaching from our two parents that is to live under God and be together in no matter what kind of background you have. I mean, that's why also two parents were matching people from different religions as well. I mean, sure, they had done certain religious background, but I mean, she has that too. But even though she is now declaring herself an atheist, but what is the common ground? And then, yeah, practicing what you preach. And so you were also saying already before that, or touching on that. So how do you create this meaning and purpose as a family, as a couple, with your spiritual differences? And what are your core beliefs that you still can agree on?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely we're still young, even though we've been together for 16 years. So this is probably still a work in process, as always, and we still have differences. We still have debates and topics that we disagree on. But I noticed that all the values that we, or at least most of the values we kind of can agree on in our movement that we strive for, whether it's how important family is, whether how important it is to be there for other people, whether it is that we want to be role models for our children, whether it is to, prioritize ourselves as a couple, even if there's external stress, that can sometimes sabotage our relationship, whether it is to find things in life that you're good at that can be a contribution for the world. All these things didn't change for my wife just because she didn't believe in certain doctrines, let's say, or a certain belief system religiously anymore. So I noticed in some aspects, or in a lot of aspects, nothing really changed on our set of values, basically. So that gave me peace and hope that, and that was definitely something that was important for me and to look at. And yeah, I think she also noticed that I think I probably also only had a chance to to stay with her because she believed that I'm a relatively okay or good person. That is, no, like if I would have been I don't know, a fundamentalist or someone who doesn't really practice what he preaches or whatever, I think that would have been I would have been a very, very quick and easy target for my wife to be like, okay, this is exactly why I don't want to be part of any kind of movement or whatever. So fortunately, that also didn't happen. And funny enough, there's some aspects where I noticed that my wife maybe is even more strict or more conservative in a way still than me, you know. It was funny because, you know, we have teenager kids now, you know, and we can talk a little bit more about that too if you're interested, but like how we raise our children. But for example, our daughter, when, you know, there were some first topics regarding boys and she kind of, you know, checked in on us, how we view things. It was interesting. I just had to be quiet and smile a little bit because my wife was very much like, no boys, you know, and I'm like, okay, interesting. Yeah, yeah. No boyfriends. Yeah, yeah. 14-year-old girls have nothing to do with, or like having if you're 14, you're like incapable of having a mature, you know, relationship or whatever. So she was very clear on a few things. And I saw like, okay, yeah, the values that I believe in are still there and didn't really change. She also did that. You know, she's still like, I was her first relationship and, you know, she still went through that. She still, most of her siblings, you know, I mean, some of them are still young, quite young. They have a big age gap, but most of them are in stable relationships and the parents are still together. So all these values that kind of affect you as a child, they didn't all disappear, you know? So yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting on how, you know, how it's the values that you grew up with were so imprinting in you and that you could still see, even though there was a lot of pain and hurt, but you still see the value of them also in your adulthood as a parent, as a mom, and
Mhm.
in a relationship as well.
Yeah, I do have to say that there is definitely things that are where we're maybe a little less on the same page, you know, also with certain political things and stuff like that. But, you know, I noticed or I realized also for our kids, I think they learn so much about the world through us because, you know, our daily sometimes also struggle, you know, to love each other despite seeing things differently is very real for them. And they have it even in our house. They don't just have it between certain political groups or religious groups or friend groups. They have it in our home, you know, and I think they mostly, I mean, we're not perfect. We're also sometimes having maybe fights that are not the best for the kids or whatever. I don't want to say that we're always doing that perfectly, but mostly they witness a safe environment of, you know, dialogue, seeing things differently, sometimes being annoyed by each other, sometimes maybe not talking about certain topics because it's a hot topic in the family, but they see that that doesn't have to stop us from being a family, having to stop us from loving each other. And I think that's how it's supposed to be. Like I almost think back to, you know, True Father when he had this whole idea of, you know, international, interracial, interreligious couples of exactly doing that, you know, just looking for that common ground, you know, and even if the common ground is not the unificationist blessing that you agree on, that's I don't think that's the point of for God and for True Father, you know. I think the values behind that are the point.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. Because there are also a lot of families that are still in the community and showing off on it's like, yeah, we're so yeah. But then there are families it's then they have so many difficulties and fighting so much that it creates not the safetiness that you, for example, have in your family, or a certain amount of that where what is practiced is not, what is preached is not practiced as well, right? And so this is where kind of, what is better, This is then the question, what is better? And I kind of definitely see where in your family, even though there are differences and either it is faith or political or other things, there's still created a safetiness and also a certain common ground, and where things that have been talked about is also talked. Sorry, what do you preach that you act also on it, right? And this is something a lot of religious people, not just in our church, but also in other areas where I could see that also with the Catholics, for example, that they talk so much on living also for the sake of the others and do this and that. And I was like, yeah, but I don't see that with you. And,
Wait, let the Catholics
no, it's not just them. I mean, I have one specific person in mind in my childhood, which was like that. So I do know it's not all of them, though. So
talking about practicing what we preach, what is your daily life looking like when it comes to spiritual practices like prayer? How do you navigate that with your wife not, initiating prayer or maybe not participating?
I mean, that's a very simple question to me. Like there's so many other habits in life that you don't have to all share as a family. I also work out the most probably in my family, and that's, sometimes a topic, but we all kind of do our sports, but it's not in the way ever. Especially praying is pretty simple, right? I might be praying right now and you might not even notice, right? So it's pretty easy to sneak a little prayer into the family without my wife getting annoyed by it. And there's a few things that I obviously do, but also like certain things, let's say, okay, let's use a very practical example, with praying before meals, for example. I didn't enforce that on my family, looking at the situation we're in. Sometimes I just say my few words and they know I just say that and it's fine. Sometimes I do it quietly. Normally when we're at my parents' house, for example, we do that more. They do that more regularly. That's just a sad thing because it's their house. They're the hosts, so that's completely fine. So yeah, it's a compromise, I think. But I feel like also with religious practices, I've never been the most theological or most, I would say spiritual, yes, in a way, but I've never been the person that's been like doing all these things to make sure that I'm a good practitioner in my faith. I try to implement my faith in every thought and every action I do in my life. I think me being a full-time family and relationship counselor, that is that is my mission. That is my faith. Almost every phone call I do in my life, or every video call, or every counseling session I have, every conversation with my wife, every conversation with my kid, I try to practice what I preach, or I try to practice my beliefs, right? So I do have my routines. I do pray, but that's not my main, that's not really my faith. My faith is more trying to practice and trying to embody certain principles. So I've never been too focused on certain practices because they only matter if they help you to become what you're supposed to become, right? And if you just do them to feel good, then I don't know. Besides the point.
Yeah. It's like there are different ways on how you practice your faith, right? Some really like and need this theological things. And I like to read them sometimes, like to understand things maybe in a different way. And then being also on Tombow workshops, like stuff like that, broaden my understanding, but doesn't necessarily help me in my day-to-day life, right? So maybe I might deeper understand.
Yeah, I also see like with reading scripture and stuff, my dad is always like, hey, what are you reading? And I'm like, I'm not the biggest reader in general, but then I'm like, yeah, I read this, that. And then he's like, yeah, make sure to, sometimes read some, hours kind of scripture, and that's completely fine. But, for me, it's also when I read certain things, I look at for things where I see the principles, where I'm like, okay, that's a different angle on the principle. This is maybe not really principle. So I have this, those glasses on all the time anyway. So, and then it's refreshing to me to not only read the same things all the time.
Right. Yeah. Because the principles are everywhere, because God has also
Exactly.
worked not in just through your parents, but also in other ways. And then
Yes.
translating it, and as you said, through the right glasses or lenses, and translating it for that. So you touched that already a little bit before. How did you decide actually on what way you want to raise your children?
Yeah, funny, because it's also part of my job to kind of, help families with that here and there. The beautiful thing about parenting and raising children is that at the end of the day, you can teach them whatever you want. It all won't matter that much. Like, all you have to do is just try to be a role model, and they're only going to be able to take you seriously if you, again, practice what you preach, or if you are a certain way and they like that, they're going to try to do that. And so again, it's very value based, it's very practice based. Yeah, also with my wife and I, just trying to work on our relationship constantly. We've been very, very intentional on working on our relationship, and I think that is raising our children, basically, just trying to be good people and doing good things. Yeah, all the other things, like, and just having a good relationship to them, even through, like, now puberty, it's, to just keep the connection in a way, and not worry about too many details, finding a good balance between love and acceptance, and also some orientation and rules here and there, obviously, that are important for us, but that we're not going maniac about if it doesn't always work. Yeah, it's the short form. And again, regarding, I already touched on the whole point with faith and stuff like that. With that, let's talk about spirituality and religion in general. Again, my best marketing for my children to maybe consider, being a spiritual person, or thinking about not just maybe this existence and maybe there's something more, is again only going to be interesting for them if they think I'm a interesting person that they might want to look into more how I did that, and that's what I'm trying to focus on. And everything else will just come. They're asking themselves big questions now too. It's simple. They know how I see things. They know how my wife sees things, and we'll see how they see things in 5, 10, 15 years. We don't know yet, but I think hopefully it will be a good mix, or the best out of us all. Who knows? That's what we're hoping for.
Right.
Yeah.
So also in a lot of families that are in our community, there are a lot of other siblings for example, in one family that is not connected anymore, like in your wife's family as well. And they've been growing up inside the community. So it doesn't necessarily define, just because you have been growing up in the community, doesn't mean that you will stay or feel still connected as an adult. And I think this is something really important for the future, also for us, for preparing for kids, is like, how do I act, and how do I do that? And so, as you said, that the kids become curious on, hey, what kind of person is my parent, and why they're like that, and what helped them, or what kind of relationship do they have with their own faith, with God, with to parents, and see that as a role model. And then, because this is how, we cannot change either our partner or our kids or people around us. We can also only really work on ourselves, and that is what has the biggest influence on the other people around us. And this is what exactly also comes from true parents. Peace starts with me. I need to start with something, and then it can radiate, it can go out to the other people as well.
Yep, exactly.
How do you support your wife's journey without compromising your own?
I mean, how do I support her? I support her by being authentic and, you know, sometimes honestly saying my take on things, sometimes just listening and, and not trying to, as you said, not trying to change her because, that's normally that leads to the opposite, right? If we want to change our partners. Yeah. Also, like, I think part of her healing regarding, you know, the things she went through, also negative experiences in our movement, has been how I view the movement or how I view God and how I try to practice my beliefs. She knows that there is not great ways and maybe better ways or less toxic or less unhealthy ways, of religious practices and so on and so forth. And that's how I I think I can support her the most. Also showing her that I don't have to give up what I believe and still to love her and to be a good person. Again, that's what it comes down to, right?
What would you say to other blessed couples who are facing similar differences in their faith commitment?
Sometimes I just also think about like what happened if, you were Adam and Eve again, or you're just like all of a sudden there's a crazy explosion and only you and your wife are left. Like, what would matter then? Would it matter what kind of faith you have? Would it matter, what kind of political views you had before all the politicians died from a from a catastrophe and you're just by yourself? Just try to break it down to the essence, right? Like, what's important for you and how do you treat each other? What do you need for each other to be happy, for each other to feel safe and connected? It's challenging. It's definitely challenging. Yeah. If there's anyone in a situation like that, feel free to contact me. Talking about these things sometimes, and maybe it can be helpful what we went through. And I think sometimes it can be too challenging. I know couples that broke up because of differences being too big. But I don't think it has to be a reason to end a relationship. And if you can always ask yourself these questions also. Like, what would Jesus do? What would God do? Would they put their principles first, or would they put true love first? And putting true love first doesn't mean that you have to tolerate everything that goes against the core of your being. It's not what I mean, but you can fight for common ground and look at how you can overcome differences. And I think that's what also the blessing is kind of meant to be, to go beyond borders. And don't give up on that, or don't see that as a red flag in every situation. Like, I think it can be a red flag if it leads to certain behaviors, certain things that you can't embrace in a relationship anymore, but if it's just a belief or system of your thoughts, it's not anything manifested yet. Atheists can manifest fantastic things for this world. Muslims can manifest fantastic things for this world. Unificationists too, Christians too. That's what matters. The fruit matters. If you can manage to focus on that, there's a chance that it can make you even stronger. But it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy.
So how do you practically do that? Because I mean, when you were talking, it's like this is also what your father said. When everything, there was what I don't remember the exact situation what they taught us in SDF, but he was giving a lecture, and then one person was asking, what is the one thing that would be left when the world explodes or something like that? And your father was like, true love. This is the only thing that is important. And this is exactly what you were saying. It's like, is it the principle? Because I do understand that certain people need the principle first to kind of having a certain frame. But if you really practice true love, you are practicing inside of the principle already, because you would not do anything out of the principle. Does it make sense?
Well, if you ask me, how do you do that? What do you mean? Like, how do I do what? Give me a more concrete question.
When there are differences, how do you come really together and finding this common ground?
Give me an example. What could it be that would be
I'd
difficult
say
for you to unite with your bestie, for example? What would be
I
like, oh
mean,
my
what
God, how
came
should
to
I
my
handle
mind,
this?
because we don't have this challenge, but
Mhm.
when you were talking, like finding a common ground, I was like, for example, talking with relatives that are very leftist or very close to LGBT plus, for example. And it is sometimes really difficult to talk with them, like with some people, not all of them, of course, because they really want to project their view on me. And this is something really difficult for me to deal with. But I also don't want to, how to say that?
push them away.
Yeah, push them away. I still want to be loving to them because I know that they're not bad people. And how can I find with these people, for example, a certain common ground and having with them a normal conversation, but not necessarily about LGBT plus or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, okay, politics, for example, it's definitely a topic where my wife and I are also very different, I would say, or where there's potential for conflict for sure. I mean, again, we don't have it all figured out. We see there's certain topics that are very hot, very hot. LGBTQ plus is one of them also. And I mean, I just try to find a good balance, right, between staying true to myself and you know also saying what I think and believe, but also trying to learn and understand her, or even whatever, the left, the right, it doesn't matter. Like trying to understand why and how do they think that way, what's behind, what kind of needs, what kind of visions, do they want to just destroy the world, or is there something else behind that thought process? Every group has their certain values and their certain beliefs why they want to pursue certain agenda. Some things might be just good intentions, but maybe not good actions. It's it gets complicated. And also with the LGBTQ plus, for example, no matter what you think about it, there's, I think, so many things. Balance is what we want to achieve, and obviously hating on them, it's not gonna work. And I see that a lot in religious communities, that it's like talked down to, and just like yeah, not treated like, if you want to achieve something, that that's like Jesus going to prostitutes and trying to talk, not being like, hey, you guys are just the most messed up people, just change. That's not, it wasn't his approach. He went there and he just listened to them, was there for them. So whenever I think something is crazy, first I try to understand what they care about, what's important for them. But I'm also straight with certain things where I'm like, okay, this maybe goes too far, or this is also not the solution. And it's very, very sensitive again. And, with some topics, my wife and I also agreed, maybe let's not talk about it. We don't have to debate everything. I love debating, and I think it gets super interesting when we have extremely different views. I'm like, oh, I want to talk about it like crazy. I want to I love that kind of tension. She hates that tension, for example. So for her sake, mostly for her sake, sometimes we're like, okay, this is gonna make her maybe too emotional, or make her hate me a little bit or something. So it's like, okay, do we need to, we don't need to find the solutions for all the problems in the world, for all the, views on the world. I'm happy I don't need to solve all the political problems. It's not my main agenda in my life, not my main mission. If that was my main mission and my wife would see it completely different, that would be maybe much more challenging. What I'm doing in my main mission, helping families and relationships, come closer together, solve their, get better at conflict management and stuff like that. She loves my work, and that's very principled work for me. She has nothing against it. She's very proud of what I'm doing. And yeah, certain topics that are super important also to solve and to figure out, what's the best for the world. I can't solve them all, and my wife neither. And do we need to solve that discussion every time in our home? Not always. Sometimes sometimes we talk about certain things, but we try to know our limits where
Right.
it's like, okay, is this in German you say kriegsentscheidend, is this gonna
Yeah.
decide, is this gonna be the deciding factor for our marriage, For some people it is, for us it's often not, because otherwise we would have enough reasons to not be together, but we don't have to focus on them.
It's like choosing your battles and
Yeah,
knowing, okay, there are differences, but it's also okay and just like letting them sit there, because it would create too
exactly.
much tension. And then it's like, okay, we're not here in the relationship to always talk about the things that are, we're different on, but to focus on more what are we can agree on. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes definitely sense. And I think that we need all to, it's just like not just for oneself as in relationships, but also with relationships to other people, to other family members that are maybe not in our community, or having very different views and finding a common ground and connecting with them again. And I think this is also what your mother really emphasizes more and more was, connecting with people that are been distanced to our community, but, just not bringing them back in a sense, like they need to come back and how to do that, because I know that have been also an issue to be contacted and wanting to bring them back, but also just how are you doing and having this extended community feeling, not necessarily religiously, but really artistically. And
Exactly.
yeah, it really had an interesting turn of conversation coming from the relational to children to political. But I believe it's very important to talk about also the hard topics. And I think it might be uncomfortable for some people to hear that. But it is important because a lot of people are in this situation with either, maybe it's not even in their own couple, but with other family members.
Exactly. And I think it's such a great way to learn and grow, right? Because especially if you think about the vision of our movement, like how do you want to bring political leaders, religious leaders, other leaders or people together who are like black and white, completely the opposite? If you struggle to unite on with your spouse who sees the world differently, it's like you don't even have to try if you can't even manage it in your relationship. When one factor, let's say one factor is different, either believe in God or not in God, different culture, different, often we have so many things still in common, and maybe one factor is off and you're like, okay, I don't know if I can handle this. But then we want to bring the whole world together, who's like even so much more different. Yeah, I think that's great practice.
Well said. Yeah.
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 Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's just great practice. I'm very grateful. Honestly, like it sounds a little weird maybe, but in hindsight, I'm grateful. I'm great. I think my heart grew so much more in the last 10, 15 years by my wife becoming an atheist. It's not that I'm like, yay, she's an atheist. Awesome. It's good, But in a way, almost yes, because of the growth that I went through, that we went through. I couldn't have been there. I would have been, I don't know, much more narrow-minded person probably if that didn't happen, you know? So, yeah, it's always also how you view it.
Most exact, definitely. It was kind of also, you answered already my question though, because that would have
Sorry.
the question on how have you been growing as a person and what has that taught you about love and commitment? And I mean, that was your answer though.
Yeah, maybe that was already the answer. It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot, and I'm grateful for it. And I'm still learning a lot every day. And that's my view on it. Maybe in 10 years, I see it completely different because everything became disastrous. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we're in a very healthy, good path. And it was definitely challenging. But again, yeah, I think taught me a lot about life and the world, honestly.
So the good thing is, because we had you already on the podcast, we have your contact information, which was initially only for those who want to do some coaching, but this is also a new reason as well to contact you if someone is in a challenging time and not knowing, okay, how to navigate that better and you say you're willing to and open to be approached and contacted to talk about that.
Sure. If it can be helpful, then why not?
I think it's like you said already, we can learn so much from each other for those who either went already through some challenges or even going through that, but having a different mindset of a challenge can really help other people as well.
Definitely. Yes.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about that. I first I thought I was like, okay, maybe this is a bit too of a personal topic because I mean, for some people it might be not so comfortable to talk about it. So I really appreciate your openness and that you had also the permission from your wife to talk about it.
That's the most important thing in life.
She trusts me. She trusts me. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. Thank you for the invitation. It was very interesting. Also, I mean, I have been reflecting a lot about these topics in my life, but these questions were also very interesting and helped me to reflect even a little bit more. Had some new thoughts that I didn't have before. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming and taking the time because I know you're very busy. That's very appreciated.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care and hope to see you some time again in person, not just over video.
Yes, that would be great. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.